Billionaire gave 4 black credit cards to test 4 7-year-old street kids, and what they buy leaves him speechless. What he does next is shocking. Before we unfold this journey, drop a like and comment where you're watching from, and one word of encouragement. The rain pounded against the cracked windows of the abandoned warehouse as 7-year-old Emma clutched her 3 younger siblings closer to her tiny frame. Tommy, age 6, shivered against her shoulder, while the twins, Marcus and Maya, both 5, pressed their faces into her worn-out jacket. They hadn't eaten in 3 days. "Emma, my tummy hurts," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm outside. The little girl's eyes had lost their sparkle weeks ago, replaced by the hollow look of hunger that no child should ever know. Outside, billionaire philanthropist William Harrison stepped out of his black Tesla, his expensive Italian shoes splashing through the puddles. At 62, he had built an empire worth $12 billion, but tonight he wasn't here as a businessman. He was here following a tip from his charity foundation about 4 children living alone in the warehouse district. Through the broken window, William watched the heartbreaking scene unfold. Emma, despite being the oldest at 7, couldn't weigh more than 40 pounds. Her matted blonde hair hung in tangles, and her clothes were nothing more than rags held together by safety pins and determination. "Where's Mommy?" Tommy asked, his brown eyes wide with confusion and fear. She's resting," Emma lied, knowing their mother Sarah was 3 blocks away in the county hospital, dying from stage 4 cancer she couldn't afford to treat. The children didn't know. Emma had decided they were too young to understand that their world was crumbling around them. William's heart shattered as he listened. These weren't just any homeless children. These were babies, innocent souls who had been dealt the cruelest hand imaginable. His own childhood flashed before his eyes, the cold foster homes, the hunger, the nights spent wondering if anyone in the world cared whether he lived or died. But something about Emma caught his attention. Despite her own obvious hunger and exhaustion, she was rationing the last crumbs of a stale sandwich, making sure each sibling got an equal share. She gave herself the smallest piece, then pretended she wasn't hungry when Maya tried to give her half of hers back. "No, sweetheart," Emma whispered, pushing the bread back toward her sister. "You eat it. I had some earlier." Another lie, but her voice never wavered. That's when William Harrison made a decision that would change everything. He reached into his wallet and pulled out something that had never been used for anything like this before. 4 Black American Express Centurion cards, each loaded with $50,000. The cards had no spending limit, no restrictions. In the right hands, they could buy anything. In the wrong hands, they could reveal the true nature of a person's character. Tomorrow, he would conduct the most important test of his life. Not in a boardroom or a laboratory, but in the heart of poverty itself. He would discover what happens when you give unlimited power to those who have absolutely nothing. The question that kept him awake that night was simple yet profound. What would these children buy when they could buy anything? As William walked back to his car, Emma's voice carried through the broken window one more time. "Don't worry, Tommy. Tomorrow will be better. I promise." She had no idea how prophetic those words would become, or that a stranger in an expensive suit had just heard the most honest promise ever spoken. The next morning arrived grey and cold, with frost covering the warehouse windows, like nature's own curtains. Emma woke first, as she always did, to the sound of Marcus coughing. His little chest rattled with each breath, a sound that terrified her more than the rats that scurried through their makeshift home at night. "Emma, I don't feel good," Marcus wheezed, his 5-year-old face pale and drawn. His twin sister Maya immediately crawled over, pressing her small hand to his forehead, the way she'd seen their mother do before. Before everything fell apart. "He's hot," Maya announced with the seriousness of someone far older than her 5 years. "Really hot." Emma's stomach twisted with worry and hunger in equal measure. She knew Marcus needed medicine, needed a doctor, needed things she couldn't provide with the 37 cents hidden in her shoe. But she also knew that admitting her fears would only scare the others more. "Let's get some fresh air," she said, helping Marcus to his feet. "Maybe that'll help." As they stepped outside the warehouse, still holding hands in a protective chain, they nearly collided with a tall man in a navy wool coat. William Harrison had been waiting for over an hour, watching their building, preparing for what might be the most important conversation of his life. "Excuse me," he said gently, kneeling down to their eye level. Emma immediately pulled her siblings behind her, her protective instincts flaring. At 7 years old, she had learned that adults couldn't be trusted, that promises were usually lies, and that the only person she could count on was herself. "We didn't do anything wrong," she said quickly, her chin tilted up defiantly despite her obvious fear. William's heart broke a little more. "I know you didn't, sweetheart. I was hoping I could talk to you about something very special, something that might help you and your family." "We don't have a family," Tommy blurted out before Emma could stop him. "Just us." "Thomas!" Emma hissed. But the damage was done. William now knew these children were completely alone, more vulnerable than he had even imagined. "Well," William said carefully, "sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born with. And it looks like you four have chosen each other." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out 4 black cards that gleamed like mirrors in the morning light. "What are those?" Maya asked, curiosity overcoming caution. "These are very special cards," William explained. "They can buy anything you need: food, clothes, medicine, toys. Anything at all." He held them out, one for each child. "I want to give them to you." Emma stared at the card suspiciously. "What do you want from us?" The question hit William like a physical blow. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to ask that question, shouldn't have learned already that nothing in life was free, that adults always wanted something in return. "Nothing," he said softly. "I don't want anything from you. I just want to see what you'll do with them." Marcus started coughing again, a harsh sound that echoed off the warehouse walls. Emma looked at the cards, then at her sick brother, then back at William. Will they really work? They'll really work. For the first time since William had been watching them, Emma smiled. It was a small, tentative thing, but it transformed her entire face. "Then yes, please. We'll take them." As William placed the cards in their small hands, he wondered if he was about to witness magic or tragedy. He had given these children the power to change their lives forever. The question was, what would they choose to do with it? 2 hours later, William sat in his car across the street from Peterson's general store, watching through binoculars as the 4 children approached the entrance. He had been following them discreetly, his heart pounding with anticipation and worry. What he was about to witness would either confirm his faith in human nature or shatter it completely. Emma held Marcus's hand tightly as they walked. The little boy's cough had gotten worse, and his breathing sounded labored. Maya and Tommy flanked them on either side, their own black cards clutched in their small fists like talismans of hope. "Remember what we talked about," Emma whispered to her siblings as they reached the store's automatic doors. "We stick together, and we only buy what we really, really need." Inside the store, heads turned as the 4 obviously homeless children walked down the aisles. Their clothes were dirty, their hair unkempt, and they left small, muddy footprints on the gleaming linoleum floor. William watched through the window as other customers moved away from them, some with disgust, others with pity. But the children didn't notice. They were transfixed by the abundance surrounding them. Shelves upon shelves of food stretched up toward fluorescent lights that seemed as bright as the sun after so many nights in darkness. Tommy stopped in front of the candy aisle, his eyes wide with wonder. "Look, Emma," he breathed. "Look at all the chocolate." Emma paused beside him, and William held his breath. This was it. This was the moment that would reveal who these children really were underneath the dirt and desperation. He had given 4 starving children unlimited money in a store full of food. What would they choose? Maya tugged on Emma's sleeve. "Can we get some cookies? The ones with the frosting?" Her voice was barely a whisper, as if she was afraid to hope too loudly. Emma looked at the cookies, then at the candy, then at the fresh bread that filled the air with the most wonderful smell any of them could remember. For a moment she wavered. They were so hungry. They had been hungry for so long that the ache had become a constant companion, as familiar as their own heartbeats. Then Marcus coughed again, a harsh, rattling sound that shook his tiny frame. The sound seemed to echo through the entire store, and Emma's face changed. The longing disappeared, replaced by determination. "Not yet," she said firmly. "First, we take care of what's important." She led them away from the food aisles, past the toys and games that made Tommy's eyes light up, past the warm winter coats that would have felt like heaven against their skin. William watched in growing amazement as Emma navigated the store with the focus of someone 3 times her age. "Excuse me," Emma said to the pharmacist at the back counter, her voice small but clear. "Do you have medicine for coughs? My brother is sick." The pharmacist, a kind woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, looked down at the 4 children with surprise and concern. "Sweetie, where are your parents?" "They're busy," Emma replied, the lie coming easier now. "But I have money." She held up the black card with both hands, as if it were made of glass. Mrs. Rodriguez had worked in pharmacy for 30 years, but she had never seen a homeless child with an American Express Centurion card. She glanced toward the store manager, unsure of what to do. "Is this real?" she asked gently. "The man said it would work," Emma replied with such earnest conviction that Mrs. Rodriguez felt her heart squeeze. As the pharmacist processed the transaction for children's cough medicine, fever reducer and vitamins, William sat in his car with tears streaming down his cheeks. In 40 years of business, he had seen millionaires spend fortunes on worthless luxuries, politicians waste taxpayer money on vanity projects, and celebrities buy islands on a whim. But he had never seen anything as beautiful as a 7-year-old girl choosing medicine over food, love over hunger, sacrifice over self-interest. The test was far from over, but William Harrison already knew that he had found something rarer than diamonds, pure, unselfish love in its most innocent form. The children's next stop was 3 blocks away at Henderson's Pharmacy, a larger store with a full medical clinic attached. Emma had remembered seeing the sign during one of her desperate searches for help weeks earlier. As they walked, Marcus leaned heavily against her, his small body burning with fever despite the cool morning air. "Almost there, baby," Emma whispered, though she herself was dizzy from hunger and exhaustion. The weight of responsibility for 3 younger children pressed down on her 7-year-old shoulders like stones. Inside Henderson's, the fluorescent lights seemed harsh and unforgiving. A security guard watched them carefully as they approached the pharmacy counter, his hand resting on his radio. William, who had followed them inside and was pretending to shop for toothpaste, bristled at the man's obvious suspicion. "We need to see a doctor," Emma announced to the pharmacist with the same quiet determination she had shown all morning. "My brother is really sick." The pharmacist, a young man named Kevin, looked skeptical. "Little girl, where are your parents? You can't just walk in here alone." "Please," Emma said, and something in her voice made Kevin pause. "He can't breathe right. He's hot and shaky, and he keeps coughing up stuff." Her clinical description surprised everyone within earshot. "Doctor." Sarah Chen, who had been restocking supplies nearby, overheard the conversation and approached. She knelt down to Marcus's level and immediately noticed his labored breathing, flushed cheeks, and the way he swayed on his feet. "How long has he been like this?" she asked Emma, her professional demeanor softening. "3 days getting worse, but he's been coughing for 2 weeks," Emma replied. "Ever since the cold snap started and we couldn't keep the warehouse warm enough." The word warehouse hung in the air like a confession. Dr. Chen understood immediately what she was dealing with. 4 homeless children, alone and afraid, with one seriously ill. "This little boy needs immediate attention," she told Kevin firmly. "I'm taking them to the clinic right now." "But doctor, they don't have insurance. They don't have parents present, and they have this," Emma interrupted, holding up the black card. "The nice man said it would pay for anything we needed." Kevin had never seen a Centurion card before, but he recognized quality when he saw it. The card felt substantial in his hands, and when he ran it through the system, it approved without any spending limit appearing on the screen. In the clinic room, Dr. Chen examined Marcus, while the other 3 children huddled together on plastic chairs. William watched through the window, his heart racing as he saw the doctor's frown deepen. "This little guy has pneumonia," Dr. Chen announced after several tests. "He needs antibiotics right away, and he needs to be somewhere warm and clean, where he can recover properly." Emma's face went white. "Is he going to be okay?" With proper treatment, yes. But Emma," Dr. Chen knelt down to meet the girl's eyes, "he could have died if you'd waited much longer. You saved your brother's life by bringing him here." The prescription list was extensive: antibiotics, breathing treatments, fever reducers, vitamins, and special nutritional supplements to help boost his immune system. The total came to over $800. Emma didn't hesitate. "We'll take everything," she said, signing her name in careful 7-year-old letters on the payment slip. As they waited for the prescription to be filled, Maya tugged on Emma's sleeve. "Emma, my tummy hurts so bad. Can we please get some food now?" Emma looked at her sister's pale, thin face and felt her own stomach clench with hunger. They had been in stores full of food for hours now, surrounded by everything they desperately needed to survive, but she had spent their miraculous gift on medicine instead. "Soon," she promised Maya, "as soon as Marcus gets better, we'll eat like queens." William, pretending to read a magazine in the waiting area, heard every word. He realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. A child who understood that love meant putting others' needs before your own, even when that sacrifice might cost you everything. The test was revealing character beyond his wildest expectations, but it was also breaking his heart. How much could these children endure before their incredible strength gave way? And what would happen when they finally did try to buy food? Dr. Chen returned with the medications and a gentle smile. "Marcus should start feeling better within 24 hours, she told Emma. "But I want you to bring him back if his fever doesn't break or if his breathing gets worse." As they prepared to leave, Emma turned to the doctor with adult-like seriousness. "Thank you for helping him. We don't have many people who help us." "Sweetheart," Dr. Chen said carefully, "where will you be staying while he recovers?" Emma's face closed off immediately. "We have a place," she lied. "We'll be fine." But William knew they wouldn't be fine. They would return to that freezing warehouse with no heat, no clean water, and no food. Marcus might have medicine now, but he still needed everything else to truly heal. The test was far from over, and William was beginning to realize that his simple experiment had uncovered a situation far more complex and desperate than he had ever imagined. By late afternoon, the children had made 5 more stops throughout the city, each one revealing another layer of their impossible situation. William followed at a distance, documenting everything, his admiration for Emma growing with each selfless decision. At Miller's Medical Supply, Emma had used her card to buy a small humidifier for Marcus's breathing, along with clean bandages and antiseptic for cuts on Tommy's knees. At City Discount Pharmacy, she purchased children's vitamins for all of them, and special soap that Dr. Chen had recommended for Maya's persistent skin rash. They had walked miles, 4 tiny figures trudging through the city with plastic bags full of medical supplies, but still no food. William's heart ached, watching Marcus struggle to keep up, even with his medication beginning to work. As the sun started to set, they finally stopped at Garcia's Market, a small family grocery store in the Hispanic district. The owner, Mrs. Garcia, watched with curiosity as the four obviously homeless children entered her store for the third time that day. Each previous visit, they had walked through the aisles looking longingly at the food, only to leave empty-handed. "Mios," Mrs. Garcia called out in accented English. "Are you okay? You keep coming back but never buy anything." Emma approached the counter hesitantly. "We were waiting," she said softly, making sure we had enough money left. "Enough for what, Nina?" Emma looked back at her siblings, who were clustered around the small pharmacy section, then back at Mrs. Garcia. "My brother needed medicine first, then my sister needed cream for her rash. Then Tommy needed bandages for his cuts." She paused, swallowing hard. "We wanted to make sure they were okay before we spent money on other things." Mrs. Garcia stared at this 7-year-old child, who spoke with the wisdom and sacrifice of a mother 3 times her age. "And now? Now we can buy food," Emma said simply. "If there's still money left on the card." William, watching from outside through the window, held his breath. This was the moment he had been waiting for all day. After 12 hours of watching these children choose medical care over meals, medicine over comfort, others' needs over their own hunger, what would they buy when they finally allowed themselves to eat? Emma led her siblings to the produce section first. William watched in amazement as she carefully selected bananas, apples, and oranges. Not candy, not cookies, not the processed foods most children would gravitate toward, but nutritious fruits that would help their weakened bodies heal. Next came the bread aisle, where she chose whole grain loaves instead of the cheaper white bread. Then milk, cheese, and eggs, protein-rich foods that would help Marcus recover his strength. "Emma," Tommy said quietly, tugging on her sleeve as they passed the toy aisle, "could we maybe get just one small thing? I haven't had a toy in so long." Emma paused, looking at her 6-year-old brother's hopeful face. For the first time all day, she seemed to waver. "What kind of small thing?" Tommy pointed to a coloring book and a box of 4 crayons that cost 99 cents. "Just something to do when we're waiting for Marcus to feel better." "Can I get one too?" Maya asked hopefully. "The princess one?" Emma looked at the coloring books, then at her cart full of nutritious food, then at Marcus, who was leaning heavily against the shopping cart handle. William could see the internal battle playing out on her young face, the desire to give her siblings something that would make them happy, warring against her fear that they might not have enough money for necessities. "Okay," she decided, "one each, but small ones." As they headed to the checkout counter, Mrs. Garcia had prepared something special. She had been watching these children all day, had seen their obvious hunger and their incredible restraint. Without saying a word, she had prepared 4 paper bags filled with sandwiches, fruit, and homemade cookies. "For the road," she said simply, placing the bags on the counter alongside their purchases. "No charge." Emma stared at the unexpected kindness, and for the first time all day, her carefully constructed composure cracked. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you." The total for their groceries came to $43.16. As Emma handed over the black card, William realized that these children had been given $50,000 each, and Emma had spent less than $2,000 total across all 4 cards, most of it on medical care for her siblings. Outside the store, as the children finally ate their first real meal in days, William Harrison sat in his car and made a decision that would change all of their lives forever. The test was over, and the results were more extraordinary than he had ever dared to hope. But tomorrow would bring the real surprise, one that none of them, not even Emma with her mature wisdom, could possibly see coming. That night, As the children settled into their warehouse with full bellies for the first time in weeks, William Harrison sat in his downtown penthouse office making phone calls that would reshape 4 young lives forever. The test had revealed something so pure, so extraordinary, that he knew he couldn't simply walk away. At 3 a.m. his phone rang. "Mr. Harrison." It was the night security guard from Children's Hospital. "You asked us to call if anyone brought in a child named Marcus. They're here, sir, all 4 of them." William's blood ran cold. He had left his private number with hospitals across the city, just in case. "Are they okay?" The little boy's fever spiked again. His sister carried him 6 blocks in the rain. "Sir, these kids are in rough shape." 20 minutes later, William burst through the hospital doors to find Emma sitting in the emergency waiting room, still in her wet clothes, holding the 3 black cards in her lap. Maya and Tommy slept against her sides, while Marcus was somewhere beyond the double doors being treated. "Emma?" William approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "You're the card man," she said simply. "They said Marcus might need to stay in the hospital. They asked for insurance and parent signatures and all these things we don't have." Her voice was steady, but William could see the fear underneath. "They said the cards might not work for hospital bills," she continued. "That it's different than buying medicine at the store if they don't work." She couldn't finish the sentence. William knelt down beside her chair. "Emma, I need to tell you something important. My name is William Harrison, and those cards will work for anything, including hospital bills. But I also need to ask you something that might sound strange." Emma studied his face with the wariness of someone far older than 7. "What? Where is your mother?" The question hit like a physical blow. Emma's carefully maintained composure finally cracked completely. "She's here," she whispered. "She's been here for 2 weeks. Room 314. She has cancer and she's going to die, and she doesn't know we've been living in the warehouse because I told the social worker lady we were staying with our aunt so they wouldn't take us away." William's heart shattered as the truth poured out of her. "Emma, sweetheart, have you been taking care of your brothers and sister all by yourself?" "Someone has to," she said with a matter-of-factness that was devastating. "Mommy's too sick and there's no one else. If they put us in foster care, we might get split up. If we get split up." She started crying then, finally allowing herself to be the frightened 7-year-old she was. William gathered her into his arms, and Emma clung to him with the desperation of a child who had been strong for far too long. "It's okay," he whispered. "Everything's going to be okay now." Dr. Patricia Wells emerged from the treatment area with Marcus sleeping in her arms. "Are you the family?" she asked William. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I'm their guardian. How is he?" "He'll be fine. The antibiotics are working, but he needs rest and proper nutrition. Dr. Chen was right. You got him here just in time." She looked at Emma with professional curiosity. "This little girl's been giving us a detailed medical history that would impress a nursing student. She's been monitoring his symptoms, tracking his fever, even timing his coughing fits." "She's remarkable," William agreed, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Wells nodded toward the sleeping twins. "They're all underweight and showing signs of prolonged stress, but with proper care, they'll be fine. The question is, what happens next? Child services will need to be notified and—" "Actually," William interrupted, "I'd like to speak with them first. And I'd like to see their mother, room 314. Doctor." Wells studied his expensive suit and confident demeanor. "Are you family?" "I'm about to be," William said with quiet determination. As they made their way to the elevator, Emma looked up at him with a mixture of hope and fear. "What's going to happen to us?" William squeezed her hand gently. "Emma, what would you say if I told you that your test today wasn't really about spending money? What if I told you it was about finding out who you really are inside?" "What do you mean?" I mean that you and your siblings just taught me something about love and sacrifice that I've been searching for my whole life. And I'd like to spend the rest of my life learning more from you, if you'll let me." Emma studied his face with those wise, ancient eyes. "You want to adopt us. I want to become your family, yes. All of you, including your mother. I want to make sure she gets the best cancer treatment money can buy, and I want to make sure you four never have to choose between medicine and food ever again." For the first time since William had met her, Emma smiled with pure, uncomplicated joy. "Really? Really? But first, we need to meet your mom and make sure this is what everyone wants." And as the elevator doors opened on the third floor, William Harrison prepared for the conversation that would either complete his family or break his heart. But after watching Emma's choices throughout the day, he knew he was about to meet a woman who had raised the most extraordinary children he had ever encountered. The test was over, but the real story was just beginning. Room 314 was dimly lit, filled with the soft beeping of medical machines and the antiseptic smell that clung to everything in the oncology ward. Sarah Mitchell lay propped up against pillows, her once beautiful auburn hair now thin and patchy from chemotherapy. At 31, she looked 20 years older, her face gaunt and pale, but her green eyes still held the same fierce love that had kept her fighting for her children. When Emma walked through the door, holding William's hand, Sarah's breath caught. "Emma? Baby, what are you doing here? It's past midnight." "It's—" Her voice was barely a whisper, weakened by weeks of treatment and worry. "Mommy," Emma said, and suddenly she was 7 years old again, not the tiny adult she'd been forced to become. She climbed carefully onto the hospital bed, mindful of the IV tubes. "Marcus got sick, really sick, but it's okay now because Mr. William helped us." Sarah's eyes moved to William, taking in his expensive clothes and kind face. Fear flickered across her features, the fear every sick parent carries about what will happen to their children. "Who are you?" she asked, instinctively pulling Emma closer. William approached slowly, his hands visible and non-threatening. "My name is William Harrison, Mrs. Mitchell. I've been watching your children today, and I need to tell you something important. Your daughter Emma is the most remarkable child I've ever met." Sarah's confusion was evident as William explained the test, the black cards, and everything that had happened. As he spoke, her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of overwhelming pride. "She chose medicine over food," Sarah whispered, "even when they were starving. Every single time," William confirmed. "She spent hours in stores full of food, but she bought antibiotics for Marcus, vitamins for the twins, bandages for Tommy. She never once bought anything for herself until she was certain everyone else was taken care of." Tommy and Maya had woken up and were now climbing onto their mother's bed, careful not to disturb the medical equipment. Marcus, still groggy from medication, curled up against Sarah's side with his new breathing treatments beside him. "Mommy, we had sandwiches today," Maya announced proudly, "and the nice store lady gave us cookies, real ones with chocolate chips." Sarah looked at her 4 children, thin, tired, but alive and together, then back at William. "Mr. Harrison, why are you telling me this? What do you want?" William took a deep breath. "Mrs. Mitchell, I want to offer you and your family something. I want to pay for your cancer treatment, the best doctors, the best hospitals, whatever it takes. I want to give your children a home, education, security. I want to adopt them with your blessing and give them the life they deserve." The room fell silent, except for the steady beeping of monitors. Sarah stared at him, searching his face for deception, for the catch that had to exist somewhere. "People don't do things like that," she said finally, "not without wanting something in return." "You're right," William agreed. "I do want something. I want to learn from them. Your children taught me something today about love and sacrifice that 40 years of business success never could. Emma showed me what true character looks like. I want to be part of raising children who think of others before themselves. Dr. Martinez, Sarah's oncologist, chose that moment to enter for his late-night rounds. He stopped short when he saw the crowded room, then noticed William. "Mr. Harrison?" Dr. Martinez looked surprised. "I didn't expect to see you here." William stood. "Dr. Martinez, I was hoping to speak with you about Mrs. Mitchell's case." Sarah's eyes widened. "You two know each other?" "Mr. Harrison donated the funds for our new pediatric cancer wing," Dr. Martinez explained. "But Mrs. Mitchell, I'm afraid your insurance situation hasn't changed, without coverage for the experimental treatments." "That's why I'm here," William interrupted. "I want to cover all of Mrs. Mitchell's medical expenses, everything. The experimental treatments, the surgery, whatever she needs." Dr. Martinez looked stunned. "Mr. Harrison, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars." "Dr. Martinez," William said quietly, "this afternoon I watched a 7-year-old girl choose to save her brother's life over feeding herself. Money means nothing compared to that kind of love." Emma looked up at William with wonder. "You really want to be our family?" "More than anything in the world," William replied. "But only if your mom says yes." Sarah looked at her children, then at this stranger who had appeared in their darkest hour, like something from a fairy tale. "Mr. Harrison, if you're serious about this, I need you to understand something. These kids have been through hell. They've learned not to trust adults, not to believe in promises. If you change your mind, if you decide this is too much—" "I won't change my mind," William said firmly. "Mrs. Mitchell, I've spent my entire life building a fortune, but I never had anyone to share it with. Your children showed me what family really means. I'm not asking to replace their father. I'm asking to be the guardian they've never had." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, holding her children close. Finally, she spoke. "Emma, sweetheart, what do you think? Do you trust Mr. William?" Emma studied William's face with those ancient eyes, then nodded solemnly. "He followed us all day to make sure we were safe. He didn't try to stop us from making our own choices. And when Marcus got sick, he came to help us, even though we didn't ask." "Then yes," Sarah whispered. "Yes, Mr. Harrison, we accept your offer, all of it." As the children celebrated quietly, William felt something he'd never experienced before, the warm, overwhelming feeling of becoming part of something bigger than himself. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork and 1,000 complications, but tonight he had found his family. 3 weeks later, the Harrison mansion buzzed with activity as workers put the finishing touches on 4 newly renovated bedrooms. William had spared no expense, but Emma had insisted that the rooms be normal kid rooms, not princess palaces. She wanted her siblings to have beautiful things, but she was determined they remember where they came from. Sarah was responding better to treatment than anyone had dared hope. Dr. Martinez had assembled a team of specialists, and the experimental therapy was shrinking her tumors. She still had months of treatment ahead, but for the first time in over a year, she had reason to believe she might live to see her children grow up. "Mr. William," Emma said one morning over breakfast, "can we talk about something important?" William looked up from his coffee, still adjusting to being called Mr. William instead of Sir or Mr. Harrison. Emma had explained that it felt respectful but still friendly, and he'd grown to love it. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Emma glanced around the enormous dining room with its crystal chandelier and gold-trimmed china. "This is all really nice, but I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "There are other kids like us. Kids living in warehouses and cars and places where they're scared and hungry." Emma's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "We got lucky because you found us. But what about them?" William set down his coffee cup, giving Emma his full attention. This 7-year-old had just identified the exact thought that had been keeping him awake at night. "What are you suggesting?" "I think we should help them. I think we should use some of the money on the black cards to find other kids who need medicine and food and safe places to sleep." Tommy looked up from his pancakes. "Like a superhero team?" Kind of," Emma agreed. "But instead of fighting bad guys, we fight hungry and scared." Maya clapped her hands excitedly. "Can we really do that?" William felt his heart swell with pride. Even after everything they'd been through, even after being given more wealth than they could comprehend, these children were thinking about others who were still suffering. "Emma, that's a wonderful idea. But it would be a big responsibility. It would mean visiting places that might bring back hard memories for you." Emma nodded seriously. "I know, but Mr. William, you gave us a test with those cards to see what kind of people we were. Maybe we should give other kids the same chance." That afternoon, William found himself in the warehouse district where he'd first discovered the Mitchell children. But this time, he wasn't alone. Emma, Marcus, Maya, and Tommy walked beside him, each carrying small backpacks filled with gift cards, medicine, and food. "There," Emma pointed to a run-down building 3 blocks from their old hideout. "I saw kids going in and out of there sometimes." And inside the abandoned auto repair shop, they found what Emma had suspected. 2 boys, aged 8 and 10, caring for their baby sister, while their teenage mother worked double shifts at a factory. The boys, Jamie and Carlos, were immediately suspicious of William's expensive clothes and kind demeanor. "We don't want trouble, mister," Jamie said, stepping protectively in front of his siblings. "We're not here to cause trouble," Emma said, stepping forward. "We're here because we used to live 3 blocks from here, in the old warehouse. We know what it's like." The change in Jamie's demeanor was immediate. "Your warehouse kids?" "We were," Emma confirmed, "until Mr. William gave us a test that changed everything." What followed was the most beautiful afternoon William had ever experienced. Emma, with wisdom beyond her years, explained to Jamie and Carlos about the black cards, about choosing what was most important, about how sometimes strangers could become family. By evening, they had found 12 more children in similar situations. Some were with parents who were struggling, others were on their own, like the Mitchell children had been. Each family received cards loaded with money, but more importantly, they received Emma's guidance about making choices that showed their true character. "Remember," Emma told each group of children, "buy what you need first. Take care of the people you love. The test isn't really about money, it's about showing who you are inside." As they drove home that night, William realized that his simple test had evolved into something much greater. Emma had turned his experiment into a movement, a way of identifying and helping families who deserved a chance at a better life. "Mr. William," Emma said sleepily from the back seat, "tomorrow, can we go to the hospital and visit the kids there? I bet some of them are scared, and maybe we could help them feel better." "We can do whatever you want, sweetheart," William replied. "This is your mission now." Looking in the rearview mirror at 4 children who had been transformed from homeless orphans into philanthropic leaders in just 3 weeks, William Harrison knew that his greatest business success would always be the day he decided to follow his heart instead of his head. The test had revealed more than character, it had revealed purpose. And tomorrow they would continue changing the world, one family at a time. 6 months later, the Harrison Foundation for Children in Crisis had become the most talked-about charity in the country. Emma, now 8 and thriving in her new private school, had become the unlikely face of child advocacy. But success had brought unexpected challenges. "Emma, you have 3 interview requests this week," William's assistant, Mrs. Patterson, said during their weekly planning meeting. "Good Morning America, CNN, and 60 Minutes all want to feature your story." Emma, sitting in William's office chair that had been lowered to her height, frowned thoughtfully. "Mrs. Patterson, do they want to talk about helping kids, or do they just want to talk about us?" It was a perceptive question that cut to the heart of William's concerns. The media attention was helpful for fundraising, but he worried about the pressure it put on Emma and her siblings. "Some of both, I think," Mrs. Patterson admitted. "Then we'll do the interviews," Emma decided, "but only if they promise to show other kids who need help, not just talk about how special we are." Dr. Sarah Mitchell, now cancer-free for 2 months and working as the Foundation's family counselor, entered the office with a stack of files. "Emma, honey, we have 17 new families that need evaluation this week. Are you up for some field visits?" Emma's face lit up. This was the work she loved most, meeting families in crisis and helping them navigate their own tests of character and resilience. Their first stop was the Riverside Community Center, where the Johnson family was living in their car. Patricia Johnson, a single mother of 3, had lost her job and apartment when her youngest son, David, was diagnosed with leukemia. She was trying to maintain some normalcy for her children while secretly terrified about their future. "Mrs. Johnson," Emma said with the gentle authority she'd developed, "my mum had cancer too. I know how scary it is." Patricia looked at this 8-year-old child with surprise. "Your mother had cancer. She still does, but she's getting better now. The important thing is that David gets the medicine he needs, and you all stay together." William watched as Emma explained the Foundation's program to the Johnson family. They would receive housing assistance, medical support, and yes, the famous black cards, but only after completing what Emma called the choice interviews. "Mrs. Johnson," Emma continued, "we're going to give your older kids, Michael and Sarah, cards with money on them. But first, I need to tell them something important." Emma turned to 12-year-old Michael and 10-year-old Sarah Johnson. "These cards can buy anything you want: food, toys, games, clothes, games. But before you use them, I want you to think about what your family needs most right now. Take your time, look around, and then make your choices. Mr. William and I will follow you to see what you decide." What happened next had become a familiar pattern that never failed to move William to tears. Michael and Sarah Johnson, like dozens of children before them, chose necessities over wants, family needs over personal desires. They bought medications for David, warm clothes for the family, and nutritious food. Only after ensuring everyone else was taken care of did they allow themselves small treats. They passed, Emma whispered to William as they watched the Johnson children carefully count out money for groceries. But not every family passed Emma's test, and those failures weighed heavily on her young heart. 3 families had used the cards for alcohol and cigarettes instead of food for their children. 2 parents had bought lottery tickets and expensive electronics while their kids went hungry. "Mr. William," Emma said that evening as they reviewed the day's visits, "what do we do about the families that make bad choices? Do we just give up on them?" It was the question that kept William awake at night. "What do you think we should do?" Emma was quiet for a long time. "I think we help the kids anyway. Even if the parents make bad choices, the kids shouldn't have to suffer for it. Maybe we could set up accounts that only pay for food, medicine, and school things." "That's exactly what we'll do," William agreed. "Emma, you continue to amaze me with your wisdom." But Emma's expression remained troubled. "Mr. William, sometimes I feel really sad about all the kids we can't help. There are so many, and we're just 4 kids and some adults. What if we're not enough?" William knelt down to Emma's level, remembering a conversation from months ago when she'd carried this same weight of responsibility for her siblings. "Emma, do you remember what you told Maya when she was scared in the warehouse? You said tomorrow would be better." Emma nodded. "You were right then, and you're right now. We can't save everyone at once, but every family we help, every child who gets medicine or food or hope, that makes tomorrow better for them, and they'll help make it better for someone else. Like a ripple in water." "Exactly like a ripple in water." That night, as Emma worked on her homework at the massive dining room table that had once intimidated her, she had an idea that would change everything again. She was reading about historical figures who had started movements to help others, and suddenly she understood something important. "Mr. William," she called out excitedly, "I know how we can help more kids." William appeared in the doorway, curious about her enthusiasm. "We don't just give the cards to kids and see what they choose," Emma explained rapidly. "We teach other people to give the cards too. We show them how to do the test, how to find families that need help, how to tell which kids have good hearts. You want to train other people to do what we do? Yes, like teachers teaching other teachers. We could have Harrison Foundation helpers in every city, and they could find kids like we used to be and give them chances like you gave us." William stared at this 8-year-old who had just proposed franchising their charity model across the country. "Emma, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Really? You think it could work?" "I think it's going to change thousands of lives," William said with certainty. "And I think you just figured out how to make sure no child who needs help gets overlooked." As Emma beamed with pride and returned to her homework, William realized that his simple test 6 months ago had evolved into something he never could have imagined. Emma Mitchell wasn't just a child he'd rescued. She was a leader who was going to rescue countless others. 1 year after the warehouse, Emma stood on the stage at the National Children's Advocacy Conference, looking out at an audience of 3,000 social workers, philanthropists, and government officials. At 9 years old, she was the youngest keynote speaker in the conference's history. "A year ago, my family was living in an abandoned warehouse," she began, her voice clear and strong through the microphone. "We hadn't eaten in 3 days. My little brother Marcus was dying from pneumonia, and I thought we were going to lose him." William watched from the wings, his heart swelling with pride. Beside him, Sarah squeezed his hand, her own eyes bright with tears. She had been declared cancer-free for 6 months now and looked radiant in her recovery. "Then a stranger gave us 4 black credit cards and told us we could buy anything we wanted," Emma continued. "But what he was really doing was giving us a test. He wanted to see what kind of people we were when nobody was watching and we had unlimited power." The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. "We chose medicine over food. We chose taking care of each other over taking care of ourselves. We didn't know it was a test, but we passed because love taught us what was important." Emma paused, looking directly into the camera that was broadcasting her speech live across the nation. "But here's what I learned that day and every day since. Everybody is taking that test. Every day, in small ways and big ways, we all get chances to show who we really are. When you see a homeless person, that's a test. When you see a kid being bullied, that's a test. When you see someone who needs help and you have the power to help them, that's a test." In the audience, William noticed people wiping their eyes, leaning forward in their seats. "The Harrison Foundation has now helped over 1,500 families in 43 states, Emma continued, "but we couldn't do it alone. We needed people who were willing to take the test themselves, adults who chose to help instead of looking away, people who chose to care instead of ignoring the problem." She gestured to a large screen behind her that showed photos of families they had helped. Every single one of these families proved that they deserved a chance. They chose their children's health over their own comfort. They chose education over entertainment. They chose hope over despair. The standing ovation began before Emma had even finished her speech, but she waited for it to quiet before delivering her final message. "I want everyone in this room to remember something. You don't need black credit cards or millions of dollars to change someone's life. You just need to care enough to try. You need to see people who are hurting and choose to help instead of walking past. That's the real test, and it's happening around you every single day." As Emma left the stage to thunderous applause, she was immediately surrounded by reporters and admirers. but she quickly found her way back to William, Sarah, and her siblings. "Did I do okay?" she asked, suddenly sounding like the 9-year-old she was. "You were perfect," Sarah said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." But their celebration was interrupted by a commotion near the conference entrance. A man in an expensive suit was arguing loudly with security, demanding to be let in to see Emma. "I'm her father!" he was shouting. "I have rights! She's my daughter!" Emma's face went white. William felt her small hand grab his arm with surprising strength. "That's him," she whispered. "That's our dad. He left when Mom got sick." David Mitchell, a man Emma barely remembered, had returned. He had seen Emma on television, seen the media coverage of their story, and suddenly decided he wanted to be part of their lives again. "I've been looking for you kids everywhere," he told the security guards loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I never abandoned them. There was a misunderstanding." William stepped protectively in front of Emma and her siblings. "Mr. Mitchell, I think you need to calm down." "And who are you?" David demanded. "The rich guy who stole my family?" "I'm the man who found them starving in a warehouse while you were nowhere to be found," William replied evenly. The confrontation was attracting media attention, cameras turning their way. Emma stepped out from behind William, her young face set with determination. "You want to talk to me," she said to her father. "Fine. But not here, and not like this." David's expression softened as he looked at his daughter for the first time in over 2 years. "Emma, sweetheart, I know I made mistakes, but I'm your father. I love you. If you loved us, where were you when Marcus couldn't breathe? Where were you when we were eating garbage to survive? Where were you when Mom was dying and nobody knew if we'd be okay?" David had no answer that could satisfy a 9-year-old who had been forced to become an adult. "I want to take a test too," Emma said suddenly. "I want you to prove that you've changed, that you really care about us, and not just the money and attention." "What kind of test?" Emma looked at William, who nodded his understanding. "We'll give you the same test Mr. William gave us. We'll give you resources and see what you choose to do with them. But if you fail, if you choose yourself over us kids again, then you leave and don't come back." It was the most mature, heartbreaking thing William had ever heard a child say. Emma was offering her father the same chance for redemption that William had offered her, but she was also protecting herself and her siblings from further abandonment. "Okay," David said after a long moment. "I'll take your test." As security escorted David away to arrange a proper meeting, Emma turned to William with tears in her eyes. "Did I do the right thing?" "You did exactly the right thing," William assured her. "You gave him a chance to prove himself, but you protected your family at the same time. That's what love looks like." But privately, William worried about what David Mitchell's return would mean for their carefully built family. The man had abandoned his children in their darkest hour. Would he really choose differently now that the stakes were fame and fortune instead of poverty and sickness? Tomorrow would bring another test, but this time the results could tear apart everything they had built together. 2 weeks later, David Mitchell sat across from Emma in the Foundation's conference room, a black credit card on the table between them. The same card that had started everything now represented a final chance at redemption, or confirmation of his true character. "The rules are simple, Dad," Emma explained, with the same calm authority she'd used with hundreds of families. "You have unlimited access to money for 1 week. We'll follow you and document how you choose to spend it. At the end of the week, we'll decide if you're really ready to be part of our family again." Sarah sat beside William, her hand clasped tightly in his. The stress of David's return had caused her cancer markers to spike slightly, adding urgency to an already tense situation. "What exactly are you looking for?" David asked, trying to sound casual despite the weight of the moment. "We're looking for the same thing, Mr. William looked for in us," Tommy answered from his seat beside Emma. At 7 years old, he had grown into a confident, articulate child, but he still remembered the fear and hunger of their warehouse days. "We want to see if you choose us or yourself when you have the power to choose anything," Maya added, with the blunt honesty of a 6-year-old. David nodded, pocketing the card. "And if I pass this test, then what?" "Then we'll talk about you being part of our lives again," Emma said carefully. "But Dad, you need to understand something. Mr. William didn't just rescue us from being homeless. He became our family. Sarah and I call him Dad now, and Tommy and Maya and Marcus do too. If you want to be in our lives, it can't be instead of him. It has to be alongside him." The admission hit David like a physical blow. He had expected to return and reclaim his position as their father, not compete with the man who had taken his place. "I see," he said quietly. "And what does Mr. Harrison think about that?" William spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "Mr. Mitchell, I think children can never have too many people who truly love them, but they can be deeply hurt by people who claim to love them, but put their own needs first. Your children have been hurt enough." "Fair enough," David replied. "When do I start?" "Right now," Emma said. "We'll follow you for the next 7 days. Everything you buy, everywhere you go, every choice you make, we'll be watching." What followed was the most uncomfortable week of David Mitchell's life. Everywhere he went, he was shadowed by his children, William, and a small camera crew documenting everything for the Foundation's records. His first stop was a luxury car dealership, where he spent 20 minutes looking at a Mercedes-Benz that cost more than most people's houses. Emma watched silently as he negotiated with the salesman, her face unreadable. But then David surprised everyone. Instead of buying the car, he left the dealership and drove to his old neighborhood, a rundown area where he'd grown up in poverty. He spent the rest of the day visiting families he remembered, families still struggling with the same problems that had driven him away years ago. At the Henderson family's apartment, he found 3 children sharing a single bed, while their mother worked 2 jobs to pay rent. Without fanfare, David used the card to pay their rent for 6 months and bought beds for all the children. "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked him that evening. "Because I remember being 8 years old and sleeping on the floor because we couldn't afford furniture," David replied. "I remember what it felt like to be powerless." Day 2 brought a visit to the addiction treatment center where David had spent 3 months after leaving his family. He used the card to fund scholarships for 5 people who couldn't afford treatment. "I left you kids because I was drinking," he told Emma as they sat in the center's parking lot. "I told myself it was because your mom was sick and I couldn't handle it. But the truth is, I was selfish and weak. I chose alcohol over my family. And now?" Emma asked. "Now I choose differently, but I know that saying it and proving it are 2 different things." By day 4, David had established a pattern that impressed even William. Every purchase he made was for someone else. Medical bills for sick children, groceries for hungry families, school supplies for kids whose parents couldn't afford them. But the real test came on day 6, when David encountered his old drinking buddies at a bar near his apartment. Emma and William watched from the car as David's friends pressured him to join them for just 1 drink, to celebrate his good fortune. For 20 minutes, David stood outside the bar, clearly wrestling with temptation. The old David would have gone inside and not emerged until the money was gone and his sobriety was broken. Instead, he walked away. He got in his car and drove to the children's hospital, where he spent the rest of the evening reading to kids in the cancer ward. "Why didn't you drink?" Emma asked him later. "Because I finally understand what you figured out when you were 7, David said. "Some things are more important than what you want in the moment. My sobriety, my relationship with you kids, being the father you deserve, those things matter more than feeling good right now." On the final day of the test, David did something that brought Emma to tears. He returned the credit card to her, unused, with the receipt showing his week's purchases. "I don't need this anymore," he said. I spent the week remembering who I want to be, and that person doesn't need unlimited money to make good choices. Emma studied the receipts carefully. Every single purchase had been for someone else. Medical bills, rent payments, food, clothes for needy families, not a single dollar spent on himself. "Dad," she said finally, "you passed." The word "dad" hung in the air between them, like a bridge finally rebuilt after a long, painful separation. "Does this mean I can be part of your family again?" David asked hopefully. Emma looked at William, then at her mother, then back at her father. "It means you can try to be, but Dad, families aren't just about blood. They're about showing up every day and choosing love over everything else. Can you do that?" "I can try," David said. "I know I have a lot to make up for, and I know I have to earn your trust back. But Emma, if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I've changed." As the family prepared to leave the conference room, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in over 2 years. Hope that her father might truly be different now. The test had revealed not just character, but the possibility of redemption. But the most important test was still coming, the test of time, and whether David Mitchell would choose his family over himself every single day for the rest of their lives together. 5 years later, Emma stood in the same hospital room where everything had changed, but this time the circumstances were joyful. Sarah Mitchell Harrison held her newborn daughter Elizabeth, while William beamed beside her. At 14, Emma had grown into a poised young woman, but her eyes still held the same wisdom and compassion that had impressed William so many years ago. "She's beautiful, Mom," Emma whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "What do you think she'll choose when she grows up?" Sarah smiled. "Knowing this family, she'll choose to help others." The past 5 years had been a journey of healing and growth for everyone. David Mitchell had kept his promise, showing up every day to prove his commitment to his children. He now worked full-time for the Harrison Foundation, leading their addiction recovery programs and helping other parents who had lost their way find their path back to their families. Marcus, now 10 and healthy, had become the family's tech expert, designing apps to help homeless families find resources. Tommy, at 11, showed a natural talent for business and helped manage the foundation's finances with surprising skill for someone his age. Maya, now 10, had inherited Emma's gift for connecting with troubled children and often assisted with family interviews. The Harrison Foundation had grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams. They now operated in all 50 states, had helped over 50,000 families, and had trained more than 10,000 volunteers in Emma's choice test methodology. But the most important success was sitting in this hospital room, a family that had been broken and scattered, now whole and strong. And, "Emma," William said, pulling her aside as the family celebrated the new arrival, "I have something to tell you." "What is it, Dad?" Emma asked. She had officially been adopted by William 3 years ago, though he had been her father in every way that mattered long before the paperwork was complete. "The Foundation Board wants to make you the official Director of Family Services when you turn 18. They believe you're ready to lead the organization." Emma's eyes widened. "But I'm only 14. I haven't even finished high school yet." "Which is why they're willing to wait 4 years. William smiled. "Emma, you created this program. You developed the methodology we use to identify families in need. You've personally helped thousands of children. The board thinks it's time for the founder to officially lead her creation." Emma looked through the hospital room window at her family, biological father and adoptive father chatting amicably, her mother healthy and radiant with her new baby, her siblings competing to be the best big brother and sisters. 5 years ago, they had been dying in a warehouse. Now they were a family that helped other families find hope. "Can I tell you a secret, Dad?" Emma asked William quietly. "Of course. Sometimes I still dream about the warehouse. about being scared and hungry and not knowing if we'd survive another night. Emma's voice was thoughtful rather than sad. But then I wake up in my warm bed, in our house, and I remember that the scared little girl who was trying to take care of everyone is still inside me. She's the part of me that understands what other kids are going through. William nodded. And that's what makes you so good at helping them. I think I want to do it, Emma decided. I want to lead the foundation when I'm old enough, but I want to make some changes. What kind of changes? I want to expand beyond just helping families with the card tests. I want to create programs that prevent kids from ending up homeless in the first place. Mental health support for parents, job training programs, childcare for families in crisis. Emma's voice grew stronger as she spoke. The card test shows us who deserves help, but I want to start helping people before they get desperate enough to need the test. William felt the same pride he'd experienced 5 years ago when Emma first chose medicine over food. Emma, that's exactly the kind of vision this foundation needs. Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway. The same doctor who had once told them Sarah's cancer was terminal. "How's our newest miracle baby?" he asked, entering the room. "Perfect," Sarah replied. "Dr. Martinez, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for our family." "Mrs. Mitchell Harrison, your family has given me far more than I've given you. When Mr. Harrison funded our research wing, we were able to develop treatments that have saved hundreds of lives. Your story inspired donors across the country to support childhood cancer research." Emma watched this exchange with a deep sense of satisfaction. The ripple effects of that first test continued to spread outward.